So today's episode is for every business owner who's ever felt stuck in the chaos of operations, inventory issues, traceability headaches, or the feeling that your systems just can't keep up with your growth. My guest today is someone who lived all of that firsthand and built a solution that's changing the game for manufacturers in the $5 to $100 million range. His name is Vish Puttagunta, CEO of Power Central. With a background in tech, he leveraged his skill set to address the problems of a food packing industry where he experienced every pain point manufacturers deal with daily. In today's conversation, Vish shares the moment he realized no one is solving this. I guess I have to. And he mastered the ability to harness pain. This is one of the most practical and integrated leadership conversations we've had. Let's jump in. Well, I want to welcome everyone back to the Impactful Leader podcast. And I'm so excited today because I have the CEO of Power Central with me, Vish Puttagunta. And we just had an amazing conversation. We just want to dive right in. So Vish, we were just talking, getting to know one another. And you said something that really impacted me. And I've never heard anyone say. So one question that I ask people is what is your superpower? And I've heard everything from, I'm a visionary, I'm an integrator, and people have used those different things. But you said something that really stood out. You said that your superpower is that you're able to harness pain. So I want to start off this interview with you unpacking that statement and what does it mean to harness pain and the perspective of being a leader in your industry.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started this company, Power Central, that helps food manufacturing companies really maintain their margins, I fell in love with the problem they were having, right? They were experiencing a lot of pain as they were growing the company, but their margins were not very stable. So they were fluctuating all over the place. So and sometimes they were losing the margin on labor, sometimes on raw material. They did not understand why they were losing the margin at the end of the quarter or end of the year. So that's the problem that I really fell in love with. And I solved the problem for one company. I became a partner in that company. They couldn't pay me. So I actually ended up investing in the company a little bit to get some shares of the company. But through that, that's how I started Power Central, right? I wrote the software sitting in the warehouse, helped them out. But as Power Central became its own company to help other companies, there was a lot of pain in terms of like just helping grow the company. I was not a sales guy. We couldn't afford a salesperson. So just being able to go and sell services to another company and then be able to like deploy that software and make sure that people are getting the benefit of using the software, that's where there's a lot of pain. People come to us because there's a lot of pain in terms of like margin variability in food manufacturing and traceability problems and the amount of work it takes to do it. But then when they try to use the software as well, they experience a lot of pain of adoption. And a lot of times there is like, we go into a company, deploy the software, be there for a couple of weeks, and then we think that we got it and they got it. But then I got a call on a Friday evening at 7 p.m. saying that, hey, my team is completely overwhelmed. I don't think this is the right software for our size team. I think we want to cancel the contract. And this is after me working with them for like 8 to 9 months, trying to win them over and do that. So that's enormous amount of pain, both on them and me.
Yeah.
And initially I used to get very defensive about it. But over time, I learned to like accept the pain, because a lot of times, I would say before last year, I would try to avoid that pain and anxiety. But I think one of the best tools that I've learned, or best skills that I've learned, is to just be able to gently accept that pain. And then I'm able to like look at it like a thawed chicken. Like, if you take frozen chicken, you can't just like heat it, right? You can't just put it in a microwave and just heat it outright. You just have to gently let warm water on it, and you have to wait for it to thaw. There's a lot of value in that. So that's what I kind of do with pain. I kind of see it as a lump of frozen stuff, and it really hurts. But, if you unpack and you usually respect it and you honor it, then you'll start to be able to completely delineate into individual parts. Like, how are people seeing this pain? How is an executive seeing that pain? How is the floor manager seeing that pain? How is the floor operator seeing that pain? And be able to really connect that dots. That level of intuition I was only able to get just being able to like steadfast look at the pain and absorb it.
Yes. I love that perspective because what I love what you're saying is that in order to make progress, you don't ignore the pain.
Right.
You don't fear the pain. You actually learn from the pain and let that inform you on how to move forward. And that's what you've done with your ability as a leader to solve problems. You see the pain and you begin to figure out, okay, what can we do to help this move forward? So, question for you: what was the moment you realized no ERP was built for your world?
We primarily target 10 to $150 million food manufacturing companies and packaging companies. And traditionally, the way the ERP was rolled out is big consulting companies would come in and actually give a quote. They're mostly technology driven companies. They would come in and give a quote, and even if they give a quote for $100,000 or $200,000, they would in the end invoice the customer every 2 weeks. So our own packaging company, they tried deploying an ERP in 2018, 2019, and that's what ended up happening. Somebody gave them a quote for 100,000. They blew through that $100,000 budget in 2 months, but in the end, they didn't get anything out of it. So that's how I was introduced to the problem in 2020. So that's how it all started.
Yeah. And you started, so a part of your story, you actually started in the manufacturing side of things and then you transitioned into the tech, right?
Yes, I was a technology guy before. I was a data scientist and a data analyst before, and I always felt like I was missing that domain understanding. So I had a consulting service that was just purely doing algorithm development and big data development before. But when I shut down the company in 2020, I wanted to go vertical. I really wanted to understand a specific industry vertical and be a business owner, not just be a technology geek.
Yeah.
Right. So I ended up buying the company, really building the technology for the industry in that company, make that company successful. So my technology comes from like being how impactful is it on your balance sheet and income statement. Otherwise, it's just a gimmick, really.
Excellent. So when it came to building Power Central, how did that shape you as a leader? Because it sounds like you flexed more of a leadership muscle going from just being the tech geek, as you said, to being the entrepreneur and the founder of Power Central. So how did that transition shape your leadership? What were some of your leadership, maybe even deficiencies, and how did you overcome that?
In the first 1 or 2 years, it was just about building the product and trialing it out in the first couple of customers we had. There, it was, I didn't feel like emotionally I learned a whole lot because in the end, it was an engineering problem. I looked at it as an engineering problem, was able to solve it. And for the first 1 or 2 companies, we felt like we were very lucky that we got 1 or 2 companies that were just very good teams and they were able to support us really well. But taking it into the mass market, that's where I felt like I was missing a whole bunch of skill set in terms of like how do you make a lot of people, they get very overwhelmed, right, when they see technology or when they get something, right. A lot of things in food, making food is not very complex, but it's like 10 different things, 10 simple things that have to get done consistently right. So if you're making like a flatbread or something like that, it's you got to be able to stage the ingredients. You got to be able to like measure the ingredients consistently. You got to be able to package the ingredients consistently. And there's about 7 to 10 steps in the entire process. Individually, they're not very complex, but you make one small mistake and you pretty much lose all the margin you can make.
Hmm.
So how do you build that kind of a culture, that kind of behavior in a real organization where people are working minimum wage jobs? So how do you connect the people that are on the floor to the floor managers as well as the executive team? How do you really build that behavior of accountability? That's, I think, what are the most difficult things.
Yeah.
And that just cannot be automated with AI. It's a very human problem.
Right. So a leader in my life once told me that, Chris, you have to continue to communicate vision because vision leaks. You have to continue to communicate even the values because even as you onboard new people, you have to protect that culture, what makes the business run. So how do you practically do that, Vish? How do you keep the vision in front of those who you serve?
Good question. So one of the things that we do, and I've been coached by, I have really good executive coaches that work with me. One of my mentors, Alan Weinman, he's got this really good way of describing like, how do you tell people whether they're winning or losing every day? So what is the metric that you can put in front of them that they know every day that they're winning or losing, right? Like, for example, there's a bakery that we're working with in California, so and then they make flatbreads or whatnot, right? And then amazing company, and every day, we have a meeting we look at what they do on the ERP, and at 9 o'clock, their shift starts at 5 a.m. in the morning. By 9 o'clock, we just look at have they staged all the ingredients like salt and flour and all that kind of stuff. If they don't, we give them a nudge, right? We ask them, hey, did something happen? By 11 o'clock, we talk to them about next day's production. By 2 o'clock, their production, their first shift ends. So we help actually close out the assembly orders. Then at the floor level, we look at like what compliance violations did they have? Because if everybody did their job, it should take no more than 3 minutes to close out the production orders. But if somebody forgot to like put they brought in 50 pounds of salt, but they only used 20 pounds of salt, but they forgot to put the 30 pounds back. These are the kind of things that will delay everything. So we measure the compliance numbers and we explain to them, hey, why does it matter? Why does like basically putting that 30 pounds back matter? And you got to explain that to a gentleman who barely speaks English sometimes. And, but what he does is super important because if they don't do that, then nobody knows from a compliance point of view what lot numbers have been used from a SQF point of view. That's at the middle level. Mm-hmm. From the executive level, they don't know what the costs are because there's a cost associated with that ingredient, whether it's cumin or coriander powder or whatnot. So if he does not do that put back properly, that impacts whether these guys are even know how much money they're making. They might think that they're making $10 per case, but in the end, as a matter of fact, they might be losing $2 per case.
Wow.
So being able to consistently do that day over day. I mean, it's been about 3 weeks since they've started doing the trials, trialing our product. But every day we have these 2 or 3 meetings to make sure that we drive this. Why are they doing it? When they, it's almost like telling a kid, "Did you brush your teeth? Did you brush your teeth?" And if the kid knows that by 7 in the morning, he will be asked, or he would just do it. So it takes about 10 to 15 days of consistency to build that habit. And after that, you reduce that amount of inspections. But you still have to inspect. Otherwise, it only takes a few times that they don't do the putbacks to completely lose track of inventory and stuff.
Yeah. And I'm sure that whenever you present those details to these companies and business owners, there's a shock because their level of efficiency may not be even close to what they expected them to be. I'm sure you've experienced that.
Absolutely. In food business, like that's one of the biggest challenges. Everybody does a lot of Excel math and say, "Oh, this is how much it's going to take in labor. Here's how much we're going to pay for coriander powder." But then at the end of the day, the price of raw materials fluctuates, and sometimes the labor completely fluctuates, and they completely lose track of it.
Right. And your software is what really exposes those lack of efficiencies?
I would say our software is about 20 to 25% of our solution. Really, what differentiates us compared to anybody else out there is our commitment to change the culture, or basically improve the culture. I wouldn't say change the culture because we're really there to improve the culture in a company.
Got you. Making good companies better.
Making good companies better, yes.
I love that. So what leadership habits have carried across both your family life and your company life?
One of the core values of our company is be aware of your metrics, be gentle to your soul, but be ruthlessly persistent.
Yes.
And that's a core value in our company. And I kind of feel like if I am not, first of all, you got to be aware. We follow Traction, Getting a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. I think that guy's a saint. He just gave me a lot of peace in my life. So at a very high level, he gives me what metrics, what are the 7 to 10 metrics I got to work on every week. So once he defines that, then we are gentle with our soul. Like in a lot of times I felt like I was being too harsh with myself because one way of looking at it, this is my fifth startup company. If I fail right now financially, then, I have a lot of fear of failure, right? Like, hey, how would the next generation look at me? Because I can't even advise, I don't know that they would even take my advice very seriously, let alone being financially broke about it.
Mm.
Uh, but if I'm that critical about myself, right, then I'm being harsh to myself, and that harshness turns into bitterness towards others. So I got to basically truly believe that your soul is untouched,
Yes.
and you be gentle to that soul, you clean it up every day, and then that gentleness shows when you're talking to a customer or a prospect, because then you're judging them just a little bit less. And that really has huge impact, right? Because otherwise, like, how are you so dumb that you did not do this, right?
Yeah.
And then I would do that to myself as well. Like, I mean, like, why is this guy making it? Why am I, what am I deficient in that I'm not able to be financially successful? So it's just it didn't help anything. So that I would say that is the biggest difference that I have this year versus last year, is being
Yeah.
gentle to myself first.
Yeah. There's a guy, he's a leadership thought leader. His name is John Acuff. Have you ever heard of that name?
No.
And he wrote a book called Soundtracks. And he speaks to exactly what you're talking about. Like, I love the part about defining metrics. Like, you have to know, what are the habits, what are the patterns, what are the behaviors, and the consistency of that will lead to success. But the being gentle to your soul. So the premise of his book Soundtracks is that sometimes we don't even know it. It can be a soundtrack that we brought from our childhood and our family of origin that can keep us from moving forward in business because we're beating ourselves up, and the thought process, I guess, is an old school thought process that if I talk destructively to myself, I'll get better. But what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying is that no, that doesn't work for you personally, and that doesn't work for the businesses that you're coaching, to helping them to get better. You have to be gentle with your soul. That's awesome. That's an awesome statement. So define the metrics, being gentle with your soul, and how has that translated to maybe even your marriage and your relationship with your children? How does those values play out and how you lead at home?
Um, One thing that once I started following Traction, and I have a lot more clarity. I don't run after everything. I'm very purposeful in what I do.
Mm.
So if I don't do anything random, right? So when there's a metric, I have very clear metrics as what I need to hit on a weekly basis that will lead to the 7 goals that I have, or they call it quarterly rocks. And if it's not pushing me in that direction to hit that, then I basically just drop it. I don't try to please everybody. So that gave a lot of time back, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not doing random stuff. And and the other mantra that I keep telling myself is that I have plenty time.
Yep.
So
That's so
yeah,
good.
and that's how it's helped me. I mean, like, even with my personal relationship with my wife, it's a little bit more become a little bit more gentler because I'm not harsh to myself. So I don't like just, have this like knee-jerk reactions when, my if I say something and they don't listen to me, I don't take it personally in terms of like, hey, do they not think that my word is worth it? I think that would have really pushed me over the edge sometimes,
Yeah.
because I used to have a lot of insecurities, and deep down I probably still do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't, it's hard for me to believe any CEO who's not fearful of financial failure of the company.
Right. And I appreciate, Vish, your authenticity and vulnerability with that, because some CEOs and business owners, they feel like they have to be infallible. They
Mhm.
have to present themselves, and honestly, there's a lack of emotional awareness. So I've noticed, as a leader, in order for me to truly serve people well and serve my family well, is I have to have some level of EQ. I have to constantly work on my emotional quotient, my emotional awareness. It's not just about the IQ. It's not just about the technical side of how we do things, but it's about even how we view ourselves, how we process our emotions. And I remember many times in my leadership in business, but also in my home, I would get triggered because of inadequacy, as you mentioned. I had my own insecurities, and I would react to it. But then I realized, like, wait a minute, what she said didn't, it didn't necessitate my response.
Mhm.
My response was here. What she said was here. So why did that happen? And then I began to just get introspective and like, wait a minute, I was believing a lie about myself. I was being really hard about myself. And when she said this, my filter translated it to an identity issue with me,
Yes.
that I'm not
Yeah.
good enough.
Mm.
So I think it's brilliant that you acknowledge that and the importance of that in the leadership, because I do believe that as we get better in that area, it allows for everybody around us to get better. Our leadership takes off. So,
I think that's very important. I mean, one thing I want to add there is that you still need a lot of clarity.
mhm,
Um, at least if whether it's my own employees or my partners or even our investors, if you are clear on, hey, here's a problem we figured out how to solve, here's a problem that we don't know how to solve, but here's the direction which we're going. Instead of a know-it-all, we got it all figured out. But if you're very clear about it and you can communicate that clarity, I felt like I was able to rally up a lot of support.
yes, that's so good. So, question: what advice would you give to a manufacturer trying to scale without chaos?
So first, acknowledge that you have a problem. I think a lot of people will acknowledge that they have a problem with margins. Um, then they got to commit to that change,
Mhm.
and that commitment doesn't have to be driven. They're often afraid. ERP has this. There's a lot of ERP failures in deployment because they start from the top down instead of going ground up.
Uh,
So a lot of times people will set up the GL accounts and put all the item and bill of materials into the ERP without really knowing how is this product flowing from a raw material to a WIP item into a finished item. So instead of starting top down, if you go bottoms up, make sure that operators on the floor are not overwhelmed. Then the floor managers are not overwhelmed. And then once they're confident, then go into the analytical reporting and then financials. That is a much better way of instilling confidence about the change. Then the change is coming from the bottoms up, not people. I think one of my mentors basically says it's not like people are opposed to change. People are opposed to change by somebody else,
exact.
right?
Wow,
So it
that's
has to be
profound.
from them, right? But you have to be very gently persistent. You can't not have leadership there.
Correct. That's so good. So, tell us a little bit more about your vision, the future vision for Power Central. So, what's next for Power Central?
We want to build 100 of the most profitable food manufacturing and packaging companies in North America. That's our vision. Um, and we want to make sure that manufacturers are successful because, if we want to compete with somebody like China, in terms of manufacturing, we got to be very disciplined because we can't outwork them. It's hard. I mean, they work way too many hours, right? But I think we can work smarter and with a lot more commitment, right? I think I really like American work culture in terms of being collaborative as opposed to being hierarchical.
Yeah.
So I really think we have a very good work culture, but mending that with like avoiding the fear of adoption of technology, working together. But we got to be very sincere that hey, we are actually not as good manufacturers that we used to be back in 40s and 50s, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so good. So, we're down to the last 2 minute, Vish, and I always like to ask this question. So, when you think about your leadership across business, family, and life, what do you hope endures because of how you lived and led?
I'd like to just get up in the morning and if I know the problem that I'm trying to solve and fall in love with the problem, just make it 1% better every day. Just focus on that one day, be in that moment. Try not to think about future too much because I mean, like in the end, even gods are forgotten. So who the hell am I to be wanting to be remembered forever? I don't want to think that far. I just want to be able to get up in the morning,
Mm,
do my practice, make the world just slightly better. And in the end, I want to experience peace every day.
yeah, that's so good. Well, Vish, thank you so much for joining us on the Impactful Leader podcast. And I know all of you who are listening, uh, I know without a doubt that this has been an impactful podcast because it's impacted me. It's challenged me. Like your comment about the metrics and being gentle to your soul and then harnessing pain. That's like leadership gold. So I encourage you all to go and process that and how you can apply that. So last question, Vish, where can people learn more about you and Power Central?
My LinkedIn, as well as our website, they're two good resources.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll include that in the show notes. So thank you for joining us for the show today. And I encourage you to continue to follow as we have exceptional, excellent leaders just like Vish on every month. So thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Wow, what an amazing conversation. That was probably one of the most impactful podcasts I've done. And I loved these three key points. Number one, in order to lead effectively, we have to harness pain. Number two, we have to get clear about our metrics. And then number three, be gentle with our soul. I love that. Vish did a great job. And I would encourage you, if you're in the food manufacturing industry, don't settle for inefficiencies. Reach out to Vish and to get help in that process. So thank you again for joining us for the Impactful Leader podcast. Again, I'm always looking for guests. So if you know someone that needs to be on the show, reach out to us. You can email me at chris@kingdomroi.org. Thank you again for tuning into the Impactful Leader podcast.